Okay, great. Thank you everyone for being here. I'm Charlie Ocean. My pronouns are they, them, and I am thrilled to announce our guest speaker, SJ. So, SJ is going to be talking about something super important tonight, but first, they are the founder and consultant of Empowered for Equity Consulting. They have spent several years teaching high school level English in the US and abroad at the start of their career, which is awesome. Love it. Great way to travel. And eventually left the classroom in pursuit of a master's degree. They currently work with schools, organizations, parent groups, and youth spaces of all kinds on LGBTQ plus inclusion, creating and fostering spaces for belonging, culturally responsive teaching, and more. I can talk, I promise. They have obtained their master's degree in international education from George Washington University and served as a classroom observer, curriculum developer, and teacher trainer in the years following. As a result of working at Higher Achievement, a mid-Atlantic based out of school time program, they began doing formalized diversity, equity, and inclusion work in the education space. My brain wanted to say DEI, and I was like, I better say that out. SJ, so happy to have you here talking about a super important topic. I know that for those who have LGBTQ plus kiddos, especially, public school systems and all that, there's just been so much happening. So happy to have you here. And just so everyone knows what's happening, SJ will go ahead and do the presentation part of the presentation. And as we start transitioning to Q&A, we will be able to stop the recording so that folks can come back up on video and unmute if they want. However, if you have a question, don't want you to forget it. Also, feel free to participate in the chat to your comfort level. But yeah, we don't want you to lose your question or your comments, so feel free to participate in the chat. So feel free in joining me and welcoming SJ in the chat now. And thank you so much. And by the way, please feel free to brag about the resource you just published.
Okay, I definitely will.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charlie, for the introduction, and thank you all so much for having me. I am going to be talking today about creating supportive and affirming schools for LGBTQ plus and gender expansive youth. Like Charlie was saying, a super important topic right now with everything that's going on in the world. And it's really something that I'm super passionate about. So I'm really excited to be here talking to you about it. A little bit about me, more about me. Charlie told you a lot in my introduction, but a couple more things about me. My name is SJ Janjua. My pronouns are they, them. I've been working in education for the past 10 plus years. And as Charlie said, I started as a high school level English teacher in Texas, actually, which is where I'm from. And I actually, when I was teaching, I wasn't able to be out as queer or trans. And that was really, really mentally difficult for me. I basically had to go back into the closet every single day when I entered my classroom for fear of being fired for being who I am. And it was a really difficult situation for me. Because I was also living in the community that I was teaching in. So at times it also felt like outside of the classroom, I couldn't be who I was because I could potentially see, students outside of work with their parents and things like that at the grocery store. And so I felt like I was kind of putting myself back in the closet. And it was really, really difficult for me. And I also had a lot of queer and trans students who I saw that were really struggling with their identities, and I couldn't say anything to them. I couldn't give them any wisdom or comfort them in any way, which was really, really difficult for me and ultimately led to me eventually leaving the classroom. There were other reasons as well, but that was a big part of the reason that I ended up leaving the classroom. And I ended up then going to get my master's degree, moving to DC, which was like a whole different world for me in a lot of good ways. And I continued to work in education, but then started doing more diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging work. I always joke that I've been doing that work all of my life. It was just not called that because as a transgender, non-binary, queer, multiracial person, I've always kind of been teaching people how to treat me throughout my life. And so I always joke that I've been doing that forever, but now I'm doing it in a more formalized way. I am the founder of Empowered for Equity Consulting, where I work with schools and organizations, parent groups, summer camps, all kinds of youth spaces on creating more inclusive environments for everyone, but specifically for LGBTQ plus folks. And I do that by doing workshops and trainings. I do speaking engagements, and I provide technical support. I'm super passionate about this and about doing what I'm doing. I've had my business up and running for almost a year now. June will be my 1 year anniversary of starting my business, and I can't believe it's only been a year. It feels like it's been a much longer time, but I feel more energized now than I ever have to be doing this work. So it's difficult work, it's tough work, but it's work that I'm really passionate about. Some identities that I hold, as I said, I'm transgender, I'm non-binary, I'm queer, I'm multiracial, I'm an educator, a sibling, a partner, and a dog parent. You can see my two precious angels up here on the screen. Those are my two rescue dogs. They keep me very happy and very busy. They are two rascals. So luckily they're sleeping right now because it's later on the East Coast where I am. But if this was during the day, during the witching hour, you would probably be hearing them in the background. But my partner and I live in Baltimore, Maryland. I've been here for about 4 years now. I moved here from DC during the pandemic. And when I'm not doing all of these things that I just talked about, I love to hike. I love being outside, cooking and trying new recipes, and of course, spoiling my dogs, taking them on walks and all of that good stuff. So that's what I do when I'm not doing all of these things. But let's go ahead and get into what we're talking about today. So I'm super excited to be here today to talk a little bit about how we can create more supportive and affirming schools for LGBTQ plus youth. And there are some statistics up here on the screen that I think really paint a picture of what LGBTQ plus young people are experiencing in schools. These statistics up here, the numbers are far too high, in my opinion, and in a lot of people's opinions. And these statistics are all from the 2023 US National LGBTQ plus mental health, youth mental health survey from the Trevor Project. So just last year's numbers, they're conducting 2024's right now. So there will be more updated numbers coming out soon, but I'm going to go ahead and read some of these statistics off. So 41% of young people, LGBTQ plus young people, considered attempting suicide in the past year. Young people who are transgender, non-binary, and or people of color reported higher rates than their peers. 15% of LGBTQ plus young people believed they were disciplined more harshly in school because teachers or staff thought that they were LGBTQ. 53% of LGBTQ young people reported that they were verbally harassed at school because people thought they were LGBTQ. And 32% of LGBTQ young people reported they weren't allowed to dress in a way that fit their gender identity or expression in school. So this is the reality that our LGBTQ plus youth are dealing with in schools. And with over 500 anti-LGBTQ and anti-trans bills being introduced in 2024 alone, youth are seeking out places where they feel safe and affirmed. And many are telling us that they do not feel safe and affirmed at school, a place that they spend the majority of their day for 12 years of their life. So a lot of students spend more time with their teachers and school staff and their peers than they do with their parents or caregivers. So that's something to think about as well. They really need support in the school building. So school staff that they feel they can trust and that they can be themselves around, teachers, administrators, and peers, of course. So there are a lot of people within the school that can show their support, and our young people are telling us that they're not receiving that support and they're not feeling affirmed at school. So that is the reality that they're facing. So up here on the screen, there is some information about LGBTQ young people who had at least one person in their school building that they identified as supportive. We're seeing so many benefits from just having one person in their school building that they identify as supportive. So they were less likely to miss school due to safety concerns. They were less likely to feel unsafe because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. They had higher levels of self-esteem and lower levels of depression. They had greater feelings of connectedness to their school community. They had higher GPAs and they had greater educational aspirations. So these are all the benefits of just having one person in the school building that they thought was supportive or felt was supportive to them for who they are. So we can see just by this slide alone that when they have the support they need, they can thrive, right? They can see a future for themselves where our students who are not receiving the support that they need are not imagining that future for themselves. They're not seeing past the day that they're experiencing right now in a lot of ways. So, and we want our LGBTQ young people to become LGBTQ adults, right? We want them to make it to that stage of life. And so we have to make sure that they have the support that they need in the school building day in and day out that they're going to school. So then your question is, how can we help schools be more supportive? And there are a lot of ways we can do that. These are just a couple ways that I have up here on the screen, and then I'm going to talk about that I feel are most applicable to this group. But there are a lot more ways than just these 4 ways, but these are the ones that I feel that we could all, kind of rally around here. So we can advocate for ongoing training on LGBTQ inclusion for all staff in the school. A lot of schools that I work with, they maybe had one training, 5 years ago, and then they kind of checked that box, said they did it, and then they never talk about it again, right? And a lot has changed in 5 years. So when I, work with clients in schools, they want to have a training once and then kind of just move on from it. And so I always advocate for ongoing training because you can't just do one workshop, right? And expect to understand how every single LGBTQ plus student in your school needs support, needs to be supported. We're not monoliths. So of course, every student needs a different kind of support. And things are always changing. And in order for us to make sure we're applying the best practices and supporting all of our students, we need to make sure that we're participating, in ongoing training. So if you have school age kids or you're involved in a school community, whether you're a teacher or you're involved in the community in one way or another, you can advocate for these types of trainings. If your school hasn't had trainings like this in a long time or maybe ever, it's even more important for staff to have these trainings on how to be better allies and also how to support their LGBTQ plus students. So that's one thing that I always try to push. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't think about is the people that we elect to the school board, right? That's extremely important because those folks have a lot of power. They have the power to change the curriculum, right? They have the power to change policies and procedures for the school district, all kinds of different things. So I always flag this as kind of an option for folks who maybe don't have school-age kids, or they aren't directly connected to a school. But anyone can do this, and everyone should be doing this. Everyone should be researching your local school board members and making sure that you're electing folks who are openly supportive of LGBTQ plus inclusion. Because I think a lot of people probably can't name who's on the school board of their local school district. And that's something that needs to change. We need to make sure that we are putting the right people in power to make sure that our students are feeling supported. All of our students are feeling supported. So we need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence and researching who's running for school board, and making sure that we're voting for folks and advocating for folks who are openly supportive of LGBTQ plus inclusion. The next way is to ask questions. We should never stop questioning institutions. Our education system is no exception to that, right? We need to be asking questions. Do the schools, in your community train their staff on LGBTQ plus inclusion? Do they have policies in place to handle LGBTQ plus based discrimination and bullying? What is their dress code policy? And is that dress code policy gendered, right? Are there certain things boys can wear and certain things girls can wear, things like that? What about sports, right? Do we have, are we allowing transgender and non-binary students to participate in sports? What's the deal with that at schools? So we need to be asking questions of our administrators at schools, of our school board members, and there are a lot of different ways to do that. People often ask me, well, I don't have a school-age kid. How should I go about asking these questions? You can do that by simply by sending an email. Also, you can usually meet with administration of a school or attend a school board meeting and ask them directly in the meeting. Or, you can make sure that you're writing into your school board members when they're trying to pass something that doesn't abide by, making sure that they're LGBTQ plus supportive policies and procedures and things like that. So there are a lot of different ways you can ask these questions, but we should be asking them is the point. And a lot of people aren't. So we need to make sure we're asking those questions. And then the last one up here on the screen, we also need to advocate for the creation of policies and procedures that actively support LGBTQ plus inclusion in schools. So this can include gender support plans, which are plans that are created by a student who is transitioning, or a student who is exploring their gender identity, usually their parents or caregivers, their teachers, about how everyone in the school can support that student. So what pronouns are they using? What bathrooms are they using? What's a supportive teacher that they can go to when they need support in the school? So that's something that a lot of schools are just kind of starting to get into having. That's not something that's super common yet, but I'm hoping that over time it starts to catch, because it's very, very important. Other policies and procedures that support LGBTQ plus inclusion can be, like I was talking about before, sports, right? Including students in sports, creation of LGBTQ plus school clubs like GSAs, or LGBTQ plus affinity groups for teachers and for students. I always advocate to have those for teachers too, because there are queer and trans teachers at your school, that need those affinity spaces and need that support too. And there are a lot of other kinds of policies that we can talk about too, but those are just some of them. We will also want to make sure that we're always advocating for inclusive curriculum. That's another thing that we're seeing kind of very slowly catching on, but it's taking a lot of time. And of course, we have, a lot of roadblocks with book bans and all kinds of different things with that. But when our students can see their lived experiences mirrored in the content that they're learning and the problems that they're solving, the books they're reading. They get that representation and that visibility that is so necessary for them to thrive. So again, these are just a couple different ways that we can help schools be more supportive. There are many, many more than just this, but these are the ones that I felt were most applicable to this group. So I'm going to move us on. We can get into Q&A, but I do want to put this up here just for a second. If you scan this QR code that's up here, you can connect with me on social media. You can join my email list. As Charlie mentioned earlier, I actually just released an ebook on for parents of trans kids that is specifically about advocating for your transgender child at school. So how to navigate that experience. You can get that on my website, which you can get from scanning this QR code. Yeah, so you can connect with me in different ways by scanning this. And that's how you can get my contact information. But I'm happy to go into Q&A now.
Awesome. All right, let me find my way back up to the stage. Oh my gosh. So awkward. Why am I so awkward? It's okay. SJ, thank you so much. I know that we already have a question in the chat, so I'm really looking forward to the conversation that we're going to get to have with you now. And yeah, I can't thank you enough. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.